Welcome to the Stop Shrinking Socialcast. I'm your host, Julia Mallory. This series of interviews examines what it means to shrink. Shrinking isn't just playing it small, but it's any time that we do the opposite of what allows us to honor our truth. This series will feature dope and dynamic people that demonstrate the complex layers and resilience of the human spirit. Their lived examples show us that perfection isn't required for living one's purpose. Let's get into it. My guest today is Shanti Mayers of the Sable Collective. The Sable Collective is a curated boutique for Black women and women of color to explore our narratives of joy, beauty, and wellness. The Sable Collective intentionally sources from Black, Indigenous, and people of color and women artisans and entrepreneurs. Shanti is also one half of the dynamic duo behind the podcast Around the Way Curls. You can find her online at The Sable Collective or Around the Way Curls. Shanti, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the Stop Shrinking Socialcast. I'm so appreciative. I know you got tons of things to do. Thank you for carving out a little bit of time for me.
I would never turn this down. No, I'm grateful that you chose me. I'm happy to be here.
I appreciate it. So let's just get right into it, right? We're talking about shrinking not being just playing it small, but anytime that we do the opposite of what allows us to honor our truth. So with that being said, can you tell me one way that you used to shrink?
I think that growing up, because of my parents' dynamic, I was conditioned to be really, really empathetic. And so I can meet somebody and I can sense how they're feeling. And so the way that I survived and found safety was that I would always make space and adjust myself to accommodate and to kind of like hold space for that person, regardless of what my needs are or how I'm feeling in it. So that resulted in me just giving other people a lot of space to be, and me not, one, exploring how I'm feeling in many moments, in many relationships. It's just kind of like focused on that person, and I'm like reflecting how that person's feeling. So I don't know how I'm feeling, one, and then two, not being able to advocate or even express how I'm feeling, and being terrified if how I'm feeling is different or opposing how that person's feeling. It's easy for me to be like, oh, I feel the same way, like, similar feelings. But when I have a different feeling, one, being able to like feel that in my body and feel confident in that. And then two, being like, well, actually, I don't feel that way. And being expressing that is something that, I've dealt with my entire life and has led me down many, many just hard experiences in my relationships and in business.
Whew. I just had a similar conversation with someone around similar dynamic, manifested a little bit differently in their life, but very, very close. And it's just so interesting how a seemingly good trait, right? Holding space for folks, being able to be empathetic, how if left unchecked, if left out of balance, how it can wreak havoc on our lives and be weaponized against us. Mm-hmm. That's just, it's so much. It's so much there to unpack. Just the idea even to like being comfortable with your own voice, being comfortable with your own tension, and
being able to feel it and being able to feel like, actually, I'm really sad right now, or actually, I'm really angry in this moment. I don't have the capacity to like listen to what just so much. Even with motherhood, it's like, hold up, wait a minute. This is where I'm at right now. And this is as much as I can offer you. And like, you'll be okay and I'll be okay. So it's been a thing of actually feeling how I'm feeling, like how checking in with myself first before anybody else.
Right. I think it's like feminine presenting folks, Black feminine presenting folks, like kind of this idea, a lot of us, I think, are conditioned to always prioritize everyone else, how everyone else is feeling. And I think also, you mentioned your parents' dynamic, but I know also growing up in like some spaces that have a lot of conflict, kind of this like taking on that role of also being like the diplomatic one, like always trying to smooth things out.
Can you imagine? From a young age, a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, like.
Right. Some of us have been doing it for so long that we didn't even realize how much it has shifted our chemistry, and so how much I know, like personally, a couple years ago, I just had to decide to myself, like, okay, you're going to have to express your discomfort. And people may not always like it, but there's no reason why you should be the only one walking around being uncomfortable. Everybody else is fine, and you're the only one that's uncomfortable in a situation. I think even my grief work has helped me to be okay with folks that are going to be uncomfortable.
Folks are going to be uncomfortable. I know.
Right.
I'm going to be uncomfortable. You know what I mean? First being okay with like, oh, I'm uncomfortable right now, and then worrying about them has just been.
Yes. And figuring out like, what is the source of the discomfort?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, is it just like you said, is it because I lacked the capacity and I had too much going on? Mm-hmm. Was it that you really did say something that was ridiculous to me, or your behavior is ridiculous? Like, but I think when we just kind of lump it all into, oh, I'm holding space, and how do these other people feel? Like you said, we never really get in touch with what we're actually feeling.
And then it causes a loop of dishonesty, right? And then it causes you to be dishonest. So then it compounds and makes it a shadow of, like, you think it's this altruistic thing, but actually you're wildly dishonest, Shanti. Like, you're not showing up as yourself. And so it's like this shadow work and this radical honesty that I have to have with myself as well. Like, why are you telling this person you like that when you don't? Why are you making this agreement when that's not how you feel? You're actually doing a great disservice to this person, and you're really stopping any real growth and intimacy that you can be having with this person because you want to be so damn agreeable. And it's like, whoa. Ooh. Yeah.
Saying to myself, like, or coming up with this line saying, I can't love you if I gotta lie to you. But I was like, oh, because that's a lot of times, but then also there's this dynamic where we like are lying to people because we do love them, right? And we don't want that tension and we don't want that discord. But you just mentioned it like in terms of intimacy, right? Like all those little betrayals, like how can you have real intimacy? Yeah. Right. It literally is building up a wall between you and other people. Yeah. And even that altruistic like perspective of like, oh, I'm doing a good thing. I'm a good person.
Oh, it's so dangerous.
And we out here being good to everyone but yourself. Like, I don't, that can't be how it was intended.
And it comes up and people sense it after a while. People sense it. They're like, something wrong with you.
That's the thing. That's what's so funny. And I think that's the part too that I've noticed with folks, that you're saying you're a good person, but people know when you're lying to them. Like, so even though you think you're doing good things, they know that you pushed past something that didn't feel good. They know that they took more than their fair share. It's kind of like that Hippolyta clip from Lovecraft when she confronts the husband, right? And how he even tries to act like, oh, I didn't know. But then he realized, he's like, oh yeah, I knew. It was like, I knew, but only with her being radically honest, finally naming the thing that had been eaten at her, as she literally says, could they really have that true intimacy? Yeah. Because it was like he kind of, it's like when you know people are kind of lying about the thing, you're like, oh, I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm always waiting, like, for you to be standing over me with the knife because you've had enough. Like,
yeah. Yep.
Whew. So, tell me your work in progress area. Like, tell me the thing that, like, as far as you're shrinking, like, you know what, I'm working closer to this. I'm getting closer. I don't have it all figured out, but I at least can name it and I'm working on it.
I think it's still connected very much with the
Okay.
way that I know that I shrink.
Hmm.
Um, I think again, it goes with me like making space for other people
Hmm.
and me being a mirror to them or me trying to make them comfortable. And that I just find that um, I'm very disconnected from myself. So it's just me kind of like pacing myself. There has to be a level of deep compassion that I have because, again, 3-year-old Shanti was managing emotionally grown ass folks like wilding out in front of her. And so I have to have some compassion for myself to be like, okay, this is your wiring. This is like physiologically, this is you. This is how your neural pathways, the grooves in your neural pathways have been created. So stop, make space for that young Shanti and like gently, compassionately get big, right?
Right.
Mature, figure out, you know, figure out how to name like, this doesn't feel right to me. I feel unsafe. I feel, just naming things. And so I have lots of places and relationships that I've created these patterns, and I'm terrified that the foundation of these relationships are me kind of being more passive and not really speaking my truth. And so I'm just been pacing myself and slowly opening up to these different folks in my life and just, testing the waters of like, all right, this is big girl Shanti. How are we going to relate? How are we going to be closer? Because that's ultimately what I want, is like to have deep relationships where I give them space to be themselves, and then I have the space to be myself, and then we're like making these new agreements about how we're going to grow together, how we're going to stay close together.
Right.
So yeah, now it's just working with a lot of compassion and a lot of it's slow. It's slow because every part of me wants, again, to think that that's how I'm safe, that that's how I'm going to survive, is if I'm like little girl Shanti. I'm small.
Right.
Like, no. And I love to go back to Lovecraft Country.
Mhm.
I'm so excited for the possibilities and the exploration and the new creative things that happen when each person is like committed to being big as fuck in their own. I'm sorry for cursing. Free to being big. Like the possibilities,
Yeah.
the possibilities, the things that can be unlocked. I'm so excited, and I love the way that they show that in a visual way. Um, of what can be tapped into when I like really explore this. And I think I've also been honest with myself that it may be kind of like a pendulum too, right? Like I go from like this really small thing to maybe it's really obnoxious, outrageous, unreasonable Shanti. And then it's like back into more, this balance that needs to be had and created. So it's just exploring that, and each way that I sway, just being compassionate with myself.
I think that sometimes can be like this difficult thing, the reclamation piece, because you're like, who would I have been without all the other trauma and nonsense and disruption, right? Would I still choose to kind of be a person who's very diplomatic and loving and compassionate, right? So I think that's always like that is definitely the pendulum, right? That is definitely the like, oh, let me find my way, let me try some things out. And you know, I also, the fact that you're like linking it to a literal like being a little girl and the shrinking just being small, but then like how even as adults, like how a lot of us like we grew up, like we got bigger, but did we get grown, right? Like some of us are still
grown. I know.
Like some of us are still trying to go back and reclaim, parts of ourselves.
Yeah, just operating from that hurt child. The
Some of us don't even know what we lost.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like the layers of healing revealed to us slowly and steadily sometimes. Like, I know you made peace and that was your life, but you don't even realize what you lost. I think that is some of that grief too. Like when it hits you, it's like, oh shit, I didn't even know I lost that.
Yeah.
Like, I love that Lovecraft Country definitely shows like how so many folks were kind of like locked into these like self-imposed or societal imposed like prisons. And then what happens when they really can be honest and walk in their full truth and not shrink and be honest about who they are. And also just even in that honesty, it makes us less oppressive to other people. Like, you're like, I don't need to be like proving that I'm somebody else that I'm not, because I can really be myself. So I don't need the other things that come with looking like I'm something different.
No.
Like, it's too much energy. Like, I'd rather just be myself as opposed to keeping you from being who you should be.
Exactly. Oh, I love that. I love that. As a partner, as an employer, as a parent, as a friend. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
There's so much. I feel like we could talk about this for like literally like 4 days and still just be making a dent. Tell me, on the topic of shrinking, right? Tell me the area where you feel most confident that you're not shrinking anymore. The thing that's something that you figured out, like it's non-negotiable. I got this. I'm not doing it. Not shrinking here.
Taking risks. I've always been somebody in relationships, in life choices, I'm always down to leap. Mm-hmm. I'm always ready to be froggy. I do not let fear of the unknown in that way when it comes to kind of relationships. I'm a bit more timid, but when it comes to like me kind of betting on myself or me exploring something creatively myself, I'm always down to make that leap. I'm always down to collaborate. I'm always down to drop everything and start something new. I'm not scared of how that looks to other people. I'm not often swayed too much by other people's opinions. And more, as I practice that, I'm less concerned with other people's timing or like society's timing of when I should be blossoming or what move I should be making or how this is supposed to look. That's just not something that I see. I see that's a struggle for other people, but I really don't understand or feel that kind of like fear in that way. That really excites me, actually. That's also probably like my makeup, Sag, Aquarius in my chart. So like, I'm not scared in those ways. I'm like, all right, it's good, weird. Let's do it. Let's try this. Let's drop everything. I'm constantly telling my girlfriends, quit your job. Like, quit your job. Go ahead. Try something else.
Great. No, I love that about you, that you are definitely willing to work with folks and collaborate. That's how you and I met a couple years ago.
Yeah.
That you're just open to the possibilities. And I also appreciate the way that you're just like, I'm on my own time, right? I have to trust that I know something about myself and what I'm interested in, and that it's going to work. And if it doesn't work,
we're going to change it. I learned something. It leads you down another path. It leads you somewhere else. It's never, ever in my life has it led me to a dead end or like a bottomless cliff.
Right.
I'm always caught by something. Right. I'm always snagged by something else. I'm always going down this other direction. The Mack truck has never like smacked me in my face. There's always been like, oh,
thank God for that.
Yeah. And I think that's what stops so many people there. They're like, but what am I, if this fails, what am I going to do?
How will I recover?
How will I recover? Like, I'll die. And I'm like, no, you won't.
You probably won't.
You probably won't.
First, you might lose a couple
you may die, but you probably won't.
You probably won't. And especially some of the things too. And I don't want to minimize it because I know that when we're doing things that can seem fearful, but I'm like, some people, I'm like, look, y'all, like, what are you going to lose? That $25 application fee, like, it's not that deep. Like, you'll be fine. Like, one way or the other, you will be fine. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that, before we get out of here, is there anything that you want to add or share that you didn't get a chance to?
I just want to say I love this conversation. I love how you, in particular, bring words to like intangible things, you know, like the ability to like unlock people and help people to see themselves and help people to like explore. I love the idea of exploring. And there's so many mediums that we can do that with. And I love how you're just mixing it all together right now at this point, and really playing around. I think it's really beautiful. And I think that it's like you're capturing people in so many different ways. And it's exciting as hell. It's really exciting.
No, I appreciate that. I definitely feel like I am playing around. Definitely feel like, let's try some things. It's a pandemic. What else I don't have anything else to really lose at this point. Like, let's do something that we've never done before. And so I'm trying to give it a shot.
I love it. I love it.
You.
I love it. And it's like a collective, like, renaissance in a way, even with Lovecraft Country, with everything. It's like we're all this ecosystem and these ideas are like just building upon and expanding and like popping up new things. It's just been, it's exciting. We are in an incredible time. Like, this is for the books right now.
No, absolutely. And I think that we are not going to move forward or be what we need to be by being small, by not playing our best ideas, by not betting on ourselves, by not believing in ourselves, not, trying to disappear and pretend that we're someone else that we're not. Yeah. And even when you said exploring, it made me just even think of Hippolyta again, like when that scene kind of ends and she's calling herself an explorer. Right? Like, I'm Hippolyta, a discoverer as well. And so I think that's what I'm always trying to do too, is kind of like excavate, like, what else can we discover about ourselves? What else, like, also, like, what do we need to look at differently? Like, what's already been there? Like, how we discover with different perspective and make sense of it. So, yeah. I appreciate it.
So thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'll see you soon, right? Like, we're connected and this has been great. And I'm so excited. I can't wait till people can see this and hear this and view this. So thank you so much, Shanti, for your time today.
Thank you. Enjoy your weekend.
You too, love. Talk to you later. Bye.